局反了，往里面进3人怎么办？
没
回
办法，
而且
最后的2下，我们恭喜二姐。
反打，看下山坡这一下，哇，小五拿到了，哇，无情第4发。SKT 今年的 MSI 还有很多精彩的比赛，我们再次恭喜安俊。
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our English broadcast of the Chinese LPL. So excited to have you back here for our first matches of the 2016 Split 2. I'm, of course, Max Sanderson. I'm joined by Indiana, Frosker, and Black to debut the LPL for this split. How you doing?
I'm so excited. We finally made it, Atlas. 6.10, split 2 of the LPL, and this should be the LPL's patch to shine. This is the Dragon patch. This is the team fighting patch. This is the explosive patch. I knew it was going to pay off eventually. The obsession with that monster objective had to pay off.
That's exactly right. And Dragon, so far from what we've seen from competitive, has been very, very important. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we are sort of back into the regular split, best of 3 format, still 2 groups where each team will play the other members of their group twice and cross group only once. This will run for 10 weeks, 4 days a week, so many games of League of Legends. It's absolutely ridiculous. After all that is said and done, the top 4 teams from each group will be heading towards playoffs. Of course, last time we were there, it was RNG that were able to take down EDG, make their way to MSI, where Froskerin, they did quite well.
Yeah, they had an incredible MSI performance. RNG, of course, going 8-2 over the course of the group stage, only dropping games to CLG and SKT, the 2 that would face off in the finals. Now, unfortunately, RNG's dominance came to an end as they were taken down by SKT in the semifinals, although did manage to take a game off of them, so it ended up 3-1. And of course, SKT then went on to win the tournament and the MSI crown, making their perfect rule over League of Legends. But otherwise, the road to redemption for China, kind of step 1. Don't collapse at MSI. Check.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, we only had one representative. It was RNG that headed over there just because, you know, you only get one when you go to MSI. So we'll see exactly how the other teams are going to respond as we move into this season. And RNG have actually made a bit of a change themselves. No longer with Whoosh in that starting AD carry position. They have the god himself, Uzi, back on a royal roster again.
Means we have the god tier bot lane of Mata and Uzi. And I mean, Mata went from Imp to Wushin, had some Name in there, and now he's got Uzi. He's gone the gauntlet of every single all-star AD carry. I mean, he's pretty much just missing Bang and Deft at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And of course, played on the same organization as Deft, so you could almost count that one, you have to say.
I'm not going to give it to him, but we'll say so.
That's exactly right. Sort of there have been some other shakeups as well. Almost every single team has changed. WE is the only one that has stayed completely the same. IG, sort of, just because Tabe did play at the very end of our last split. But otherwise, we've got 3 new teams. Of course, I'm a newbie and Saints in here now. So lots of different faces, lots of new things to the LPL. And how do we feel like this is all going to shape out? Because honestly, RNG looks so scary on paper right now that it's going to be really tough to try and catch them towards the top.
I think the big thing is also to recognize that RNG looked better at MSI than they did in the LPL domestic split. There was definitely a big improvement and strength in just how they were moving around the map when they showed up on an international competition. So we'll see if they're able to bring that back to the domestic league and the other teams will start to expand and see that type of growth. Or if we're going to go more to kind of Chinese-style aggressive fighting now that the patch really emphasizes this. But I really want to quickly touch back onto the 3 new teams that you talked about because you will see one of them tonight, Game Talents, otherwise known as GT, and they're formerly known as EPA, so if you guys remember Energy Pacemaker with Gimgoon in the top lane, same team, renamed, kind of some different faces.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So it is going to be EPA's sort of top side of the map with Gimgoon there, as well as Crisis and Republic in the mid lane. and then we're going to have PentaQ and Savoki back in the bottom lane.
Formerly of the Masters 3 bottom lane, of
Yep.
course. Now, Saint is going to be formerly of Hyper Youth Gaming. The roster has been completely gutted, practically, and replaced by some really familiar faces, including Acorn in the top lane. And then the true new team, or the LSPL promotion, is going to be IMA, formerly known as Edward Esports. So this was EDG's sister team in the LSPL, auto-promoted. Of course, EDG can't have two teams in the LPL, had to sell them off. They're now labeled as IMA.
Yeah, and of course, the auto-promotion thing is really interesting as well because we didn't get to see them in any of these promotion games. And it'll be exciting to see whether they can take their incredibly dominant run in the LSPL and start to run through the LPL with it. Because we've seen teams like, you know, Xiaogu, teams like Snake come out of the LSPL and really do fantastic things in the LPL.
And it's really important, like you said, to kind of where IMA match up in terms of like the historic great teams that have come out of the LSPL. There is a lot riding on them, and there's a lot of expectation simply because we've seen some of this roster perform the LPL before. If you remember Jin Zhao, Road, Amazing Jay, he's going to be the top laner for them. So they have a lot of professional experience. It's now, can they keep up with all of the all-star, superstar Korean imports and all of the evolutions that the LPL teams have made over the course of Spring Split?
Yeah, and I'm actually really excited, just staying on IMA just for a moment, because Road in the bottom lane is really, really exciting to talk about here because this guy has so much sort of hype around him that he's a really, really exciting player to watch. So I'm excited to see how he does in the LPL.
Yeah, I'm also excited to see how Road performs. Obviously, he's played a lot with Deft. There was some crossover there. They're not in the EDG house anymore, so see if some rivalry maybe exists there still. But otherwise, the big guy that I want to focus on if we're talking about roster adjustments and Korean imports and all-stars is going to be with our opening game, which is going to be QG, now known as Newbie, versus EDG, and it's the return of the 2014 Spring King Dade.
Yeah, and I know everyone's going to be thinking, oh my god, it's now Dade versus Pawn, but unfortunately, Pawn still with his injury. It is going to be Scout there in the mid lane, of course, sort of former understudy for SKT, sort of playing alongside Faker, but not necessarily stepping into the shoes. Sort of after Easy Hoon left, Scout came in. Now he's playing for EDG, and we'll see exactly how that matchup's going to go in the mid lane. Unfortunately, no jackets to be won back here by Dade this time around, but we'll see how Scout faces off against him on a very, very consolidated roster otherwise for EDG.
Yeah, and other roster adjustments is always going to be who's going to be the AD carry. We talked about how Uzi moved over into RNG's lineup. Well, guess who took back over for the AD carry? It's going to be Pekko, now known as Happy. So when you see Happy, still the same guy. It's pretty much QG's roster to a T. It's going to be
TNT to Pekko to Happy.
To Avenger, to Quiet, to Fit.
Oh,
goes on and
goodness.
on and on.
Yeah.
He changes his name like every
lot.
season. So does Moore, but Moore is also down there with him. But otherwise, it's the exact same QG roster, again, now known as Newbie. Only difference is it's Dade stepping back into the mid lane as opposed to Doinby, and Pekko returning to the AD carry starting lineup.
Yeah, and things sort of, as far as the languages that they speak on this team as well, it is going to be very similar just because Dade and Doinby, both Korean mid laners, and then Swift as well being still the Korean jungler. We'll see how Dade and Swift play together because this team was all about sort of Doinby being there for Swift towards the start of the season where QG were looking extraordinarily dominant. I'm really excited to see this team, whether they can develop this early skirmishing style that they've had into this new meta that is so dragon-focused. I have a feeling that if they are able to sort of cultivate this, could be very, very exciting for this roster.
Yeah, and again, reminder, we are starting on patch 6.10, so we're up to date with everything. You are correct. Dade is a big team fighting mid laner. Newbie are known as a team fighting team. We often call them the kings of team fighting in the LPL. Although we are going to go ahead and look at the groups on your screen right now.
Yeah, so RNG and EDG this time split up, not going to be in the same team. We are going to have a look at a bit of an overview here as Energy Pacemaker, as you can see, have been turned into game talents.
Hey, this looks
IB
familiar.
Gaming, now to Saint. QG, like we were talking about just before, now Newbie. And EDE, the EDG sister team, are now going to be IMA. Really good to see them actually sort of spell it out for us. And lots of switch-ups here as Newbie has, of course, picked up Dade.
Look at that haircut.
Yeah, I know, looking fantastic. World 6 and Zhui. You can see LGD, no more Wayless there in the mid lane. Some unfortunate things there for that team that we will be seeing later on in the week. Snake have picked up JZ instead of Ella there towards the bottom side of the map. And Acorn and Otto. We need to talk about Otto at some point as we go through here as game talents. PentaQ and Savoki, of course. And Athena actually stepping into the sub position as Uzi's moved over to RNG. Now opening topic there and sort of the Chinese all-star AD carry himself. Very, very scary to see on such a strong roster. And I mean, Whoosh was playing fantastically well, but I don't know whether you can really stand next to Uzi.
It's always going to come down to the fact that anytime you have Uzi on your team, it opens up the possibility of those 1% miracle plays, just because he has that incredible mechanical ceiling. So you are correct. Wushin played fantastic. He had a great baseline, especially as a very young player coming into the LPL, meeting those expectations. You saw a ton of growth over the course of just working in a short time period with Mata, but unfortunately, he cannot compare to the experience and more so the miracle talent that Uzi just seems to have with him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we did see, like, there are a lot of roster changes, guys. So we are actually going to go through them in depth before every matchup. You don't have just that quick run through in order to rely on, because there are just so many things that we need to talk about here. So, of course, before each game, we will make sure we let you know exactly what's happened.
But the one that I want to go back to again is going to be our upcoming matchup, which is going to be EDG versus Newbie. So again, it's Scout in the mid lane, which means that the EDG roster is going to be Koro, Clearlove, Scout, Daft, and Mako. Across on Newbie, it's going to be V, Swift, Dade, Happy, and more. Now, the point that we were bringing up before the pretty graphics came out on our screen and we were talking about the roster adjustments is team fighting. That these two teams, EDG and Newbie, are the best team fighting teams in the LPL in a region that's known for its ability to team fight. But what I find actually very interesting is how these teams execute on such a high level of team fighting. And for Newbie, it's always been that tandem duo of Swift and Doinby. When these guys are on point, Doinby really compensates for Swift's over-aggressive moves and really opens up space and allows him to be that hard carry jungler, because he plays things like the LeBlanc, like if you look at Doinby's early career, it was Morgana and Lulu almost exclusively, like a secondary support just following Swift around, and then it turned more into like this assassin high mobility style. On the other side, for EDG, it's really been Clearlove and Koro as that big tanky front line to open up space for Deft to go nuts. Now the issue is Doinby's gone and Koro's underperforming. So do EDG